This is the Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. It's a show full of informative chat and inspirational messages. The Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show on podcast. Hello, welcome to Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. I'm your host Claire, and we've got an important mission this month. It is Brain Tumour Awareness Month, and we're shedding light on a crucial issue. Brain tumours claim more lives among children and adults under 40 than any other cancer. Shockingly, only 1% of the national spend on cancer research is allocated to this silent threat. Thank you very much for coming to share your experience and also just be a part of Brain Tumour Awareness Month. Should we go back and talk about Lily?
When she was born, she was a great big baby. She was £9.4, which for a first baby is
Wow.
huge. And yeah, and her mum's only tiny, bless her. So it was quite a traumatic birth for them both. But everything settled into their new life, if you like. But actually, after a few weeks, we just noticed that something wasn't quite right. Lily wasn't feeding very well and she had this sort of high-pitched scream. And so they put onto bottles, but that didn't seem to work. They kept taking to the doctors. And finally, they said, we'll send you to a dietitian. And they decided she was lactose intolerant, which actually she's not. So this was all in 2016, 2017. And she was born in 16 in the November. And once she started weaning, again, she was just eating less. And the dietitian was saying, put cream in her food and do this, add cheese to this and add cream. But yeah, you can add cream to a dish of baked beans. But if she's only eating 3 baked beans, it's really not going to make a difference. And so she just kept losing more and more weight. And she started life in that top 90% of the scale, if you like, was now bottom. And everyone was worried. But it was really hard because Leanna is my daughter-in-law, Stephen is my son. I didn't want to be the interfering mother-in-law. Then there's only so much you can say, isn't there? And I did, with Leanna's permission and with Leanna, actually, I took her to the doctors 3 times myself. But the doctors just kept looking at her and saying, look how happy she is, she's active, she can't be seriously wrong. And one doctor just laughed and says, she's a fussy eater, give her cornflakes. And it was like they were just so focused on that, on the fact that she was smiling and busy doing things, that they didn't actually stop to look at her and realise that underneath the clothes there was a skeleton. I can honestly tell you, I was so worried. And when I used to look after her on a Thursday morning while Leanna was at work, and I'd be changing her nappy and I'd be crying because I'd just see bone, just skin, flesh hanging off, well, nothing there really. And it was just terrifying knowing that surely there was something wrong. So eventually they went to a private paediatrician, and thank goodness she finally said, what are your doctors doing? And it became apparent that she was concerned. Started running tests, but actually what happened was Lily just stopped eating, went very lethargic, so they rushed her into A&E. And they admitted her to the ward and carried on doing the tests. So she was with the same consultant and doing more tests. And again, and had one of those feeding tubes through the nose down into the stomach. But nothing, she'd been about 10 days. We had her first birthday there, and they still hadn't found out what it was. But then while she was having a heart examination, luckily her other grandma was there and spotted that under the lights in this bright room, Lily's eye was flickering. So they told the nurses, and they decided to do an MRI a few days later. I honestly, Claire, I had no idea. I didn't understand why they were doing it. I was convinced that she was celiac. Even though they tested for that and ruled it out, I was absolutely convinced. And so much so that on the day of the scan, I was at the hospital with Lily and Leanna, and I went down to wait with them whilst we're waiting for the scan. But when she went in for the scan, Lily's other grandma had arrived and the great grandma was coming. And so I said, look, I'll leave you to it. There's going to be too many of us here now. I'll just go home. I had some work to do. I thought I'll just sit and do some work because I honestly thought there would be nothing found. It was just yet another thing to tick off. And so when my son called me at 5 o'clock that same day, just a few hours later, it just blew me away. He said it was a brain tumour, and it's an optic pathway glioma. And she had visual impairment as well. And she has something called I'm not going to say this, diencephalic syndrome. And actually it turns out that the side effects of this syndrome, which often has a glioma associated, which obviously she had, hyperactivity and euphoria. And so that's why she was always so happy and so active. But fortunately, our local hospital, Great Ormond Street involved, and so my son was able to say to me, she could be fine. Great Ormond Street are going to treat her. She'll need chemo for a year and she'll be fine. And it was devastating. And at that time, I had no idea about brain tumours. I know way more than I would ever wanted to have known now, sadly. I didn't know that the research isn't there. You hear so much about all the advancements in cancer, which is fantastic, but it just hasn't happened for brain tumours. For many years, there was 1% of the national spend was on brain tumours of all cancer research. I think it's up to about 3% now, just in the last few years. That's nothing. And what ended up happening is that Lily, it wasn't a year, Lily actually had chemo for 4 years because each plan was a year long. She had various types of chemo, each a year long, but as soon as they stopped the treatment, the tumour grew again. And so she was back on another round. So that's why it took the 4 years. And overall, she's had 8 different types of chemo. Some she's been given at the same time. So like cocktails of chemo, one week, another the next week, and a third the week after. And the problem is when you're given chemo, these drugs for so long, your body starts to react. And so she's had allergic reactions, anaphylactic shock. And when you have that, you can't have that chemo anymore. And all but one, most of the 8 that she was given were developed back in the 1960s, and they were just developed for adults. And just cancer generally. When I was so relieved that she was going to be treated by GOSH, I had no idea there wasn't a brain tumour specific chemo that was safe for children, and there isn't. And it has all the side effects from regular chemo. You lose your hair, your sickness, etc. But on a young child, it does such damage to their bodies. One chemo Lily had to stop because she was getting pain in her legs and couldn't walk. So, she had to come off that treatment. And so it's been tough seeing her going through that, seeing Stephen and Leanna going through that. And I don't know if you saw my post today, I was talking about how when a child's got cancer, it affects the whole family. We're all there. We're all worried. Everybody's worried. And it's difficult. And me as a grandma, I feel like I'm in this outer circle because I'm looking at my child, my son, with his child. And I want to help, but there's only so much that I can do because I'm not Lily's mum, I'm her grandma. So I have a different role to play, and I help them as much as I can. That's why right from even before Lily was diagnosed, I was looking after her for a few hours a week whilst Leanna was working. But obviously once Lily started the treatment, Leanna, she had to give up work. There was no way with all the different chemos and the other treatments they have alongside, as you're in and out of hospital, because every time you spike a temperature, if you get an infection when the immune system is so low when you're on chemo, if you get an infection, straight into the hospital, you're there at least 3 days while they rule out sepsis and other terrible diseases that you may get. And so it's very difficult to sustain a job in that time. So Leanna is at home, and she's now actually Lily's got a baby sister, Luna, who's 3 now. So I help. I try and give Leanna a break, obviously. But as I say, Lily had treatment for 4 years. And in that time, she's also had some operations. They can't, where the tumour is, it's too risky to remove it. Nearly did at one point because they didn't think the chemo was working. And then miraculously, it grew just before the operation, which was a miracle. It was literally, let's take a scan. And so we have a starting point before the op, and they were all staggered that it actually shrunk. So they decided to do a biopsy instead and then carry on with the chemo. But she's also had a shunt fitted. She's got a shunt inside her head to drain away the fluid. Although she stopped chemo in about 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, and the tumour has remained stable, which is fantastic after all this time. It does have cysts growing on it. And so this time last year, Lily was actually in GOSH, and she had major surgery to drain the cyst. And this is the thing that you think these days that surely draining's pretty easy, small incision, stick something in it and suck it out sort of type thing. But actually, no. If you picture a face, a clock face, if you like, the scar goes from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. It's in her hairline, so you can't see it, but It's major surgery and scary. And because at that time she was 6. When she was little, she didn't really know what was going on. There was only so much we could try and tell a young child. She didn't know any different. Whereas now she asks a lot more questions. She's a lot more aware. She doesn't have the different lines. She had a Hickman line, and then she had a port to administer all the treatment, but they're not there anymore. So she, bless her, has to have a cannula to have any drugs admitted and finger prick blood tests. And they're the things that scare her. I'm glad that's what scares her rather than the fact that she's having an operation. She doesn't understand that still, which is good. She gets terrified at the idea of having all these other things that she's got to have during that treatment. And the cyst is growing back, and we're waiting to see what happens.
Is she able to still do classes and stuff with, as every other kid?
She does. Absolutely. And actually she is at school. She's 7, so she does have to go to school. Yeah. And I was reflecting on that this morning, right the way through her treatment, and I guess maybe this is why she had so many infections, is we were encouraged to keep her at preschool, go to nursery, put her in preschool, because it's important that she does have that element of a normal life. And luckily her blood count was mostly good. There were times when we had to be very careful, and would, obviously keep her at home, but mostly she was okay. So she's been at school. She's actually, believe it or not, she's learning gymnastics at the moment, which is terrifying for me because obviously she's got visual impairment. So she's blind in her left eye, and she's got no periphery to the right. And as you're probably aware, and I didn't know this, but you need 2 eyes to have any depth perception. So the thought of doing gymnastics and walking along a beam is just amazing. But she loves it.
Yeah.
She's learning to play golf. She goes to rainbows. And yeah, from her perspective, she's at school. She doesn't think that she can't do it because of her brain tumor. She does. She's saying more and more. When she moved up a year last September, she was getting a lot of nausea. So their head was spinning, and it could be the cyst, but it could equally be the fact that she's doing more concentrated work. And when you have visual impairment, your brain's having to work doubly hard to process information. And if all the children are looking at a big electronic board instead of the old blackboard I used to have to look at, big board, she can't see it. She can't scan it the same way as you or I can. And so she's now got a laptop which mirrors the board, and that's helping.
I was going to say that actually. Do they do something like that? Yeah, I wondered if they
do. Yeah,
that's good.
Which is fantastic. And the teachers let her have breaks when she needs more breaks. She needs to just rest and allow everything to recover. And she'll often start saying things to me about, I can't see very well there, Grandma. I was teasing her the other day. We were playing golf, and I was teasing her for not helping me find her ball. And because I couldn't find it, and I said, "You're not going to help." She says, "Well, I can't exactly see very well, Grandma, can I?" And I just laughed and said, "I'm really sorry, Lily. I forget because you cope so well.
Yeah,
I completely forget. So yes, that's fine. You stand over there. You eat your crisps, and I will carry on looking for your ball."
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm partially blind, so I can't see either. Like, I can only see a certain amount. I have to turn my head to see it. So my husband, whoever I'm with, they say, "Oh, look over here," and I'm like, I'm looking the other way. What are they talking about? And they're pointing, going over here, and I'm like, "Oh, hang on," and I have to turn my body around and be like, "Okay, so you're pointing in my blind spot," and I'll go, "Yeah, thanks, you're in my blind spot." Like, and they'll always go, "Oh yeah, sorry, I completely forgot," and I'm like, it's only been 15 years that I've had this, and people still don't realize I cannot see them.
I think it's because you're coping so well,
and you look
I would
well.
think it's a compliment.
Yeah,
you're coping,
and you look fine.
And you look well.
Yeah.
And I regularly, when I talk about Lily to people, I say, if she were to walk in now and you were to meet her,
you wouldn't know.
You wouldn't think there was anything wrong. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't know.
So is this consistent all the time now? She has treatments, checkups?
She needs hormone treatment monthly to counteract some of the damage the tumour's doing. And that's just because of where it's sitting in her brain, and she'll need those for a while longer. And then she has regular eye tests, and she has MRIs. She had an MRI. It's usually 3 to 4 months. She did have one before Christmas because there was the concern about her at school and this nausea, etc., and dizziness. So they decided to do an MRI just to make sure everything's okay. And as I say, and then they did another one in January, and I think there's one in May. So it's regular, and you must know this with either yourself or the people you speak to. You can live from scan to scan, and in that period where you've got a decent amount of time, it's quite a long time till May, you just forget about it. It's in a box, it's over there, I'm not thinking about it. And then as you start to get closer, it starts rearing its head slightly, and I keep trying to lock the lid down again until it's the time of the scan. But of course, the scan itself is the easy bit. It's the waiting for when do you get the results, and this is where it's so hard because people are great. Everyone is very caring, but people always ask me questions that I don't know the answer to, and they don't understand why don't you know? And I said, I don't. And it's because Lily's not my child. And so there's only so many questions that I can ask my son and daughter-in-law because they don't want to talk about it all the time. And we can't really talk about it in front of Lily because she's of an age where she'll stand and listen. She'll pretend to be busy and she's listening. So you can't. And so I don't want to bombard Stephen and Leanna with questions. And sometimes nobody knows because actually the consultants don't know.
No, they don't.
And this is the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the brain tumours are so rare and there's so many types that nobody has the answer. And we'd all love the answer, but as I say, if the consultants don't really know why is it growing and why is it gone down, why is it going, like I say, they were staggered that it'd gone down when it did a few years ago. It's grown, obviously, then it grew back up at some point, but it's very difficult, and you just have to. I answer what I can and hope that people respect when I say I don't know, because I say to them, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the future holds. I know, sadly, too many stories of children with a similar tumour to Lily who are no longer with us. And so I daren't ask the question, who do we know that's in the same situation as Lily? Because you don't want to know that there's not many, because that's scary.
Yeah.
So I'd sooner not know the answer. You don't, and what good would it do? How would it help me? Because everybody's different. So Lily's tumour, Lily's whole situation is going to be different to somebody else's. So sometimes knowing too much doesn't help, does it?
Yeah.
We just need Lily to continue to do well. She's going to have the tumour forever, however long it ever might be.
Yeah.
And who knows what her adulthood might look like, because when children have had chemo as children, it affects them in all sorts of ways as they get older. They're more likely to have adult cancer, so the stats say, apparently. I'm conscious that whatever I'm feeling, my son and daughter-in-law are feeling it so much worse because it's my granddaughter, but it's their child. But yeah, as a grandma, I said already, it's my son, and therefore I'm hurting for him. But then I have to remember that actually my other son, it's his niece, and he's dealing with it. My nieces loved Lily to bits, and it affects everybody.
How did you get involved with 3 charities, 3 places? Like, where did that start that you were like, oh, where can I go and help?
It was amazing. I'd found myself on a bit of a path. So when Lily was first diagnosed and under treatment with GOSH, my son and daughter-in-law decided they would do some fundraising for GOSH, and that's what we did. And so I put my heart and soul in that, and we raised a great over 50,000 for them over a period of time, and I was involved in multiple activities for that, and working full time at the same time. And then, I realised that actually I wanted to focus a bit more on children's cancer. Then actually I found myself going down this funnel, so starting with children's illnesses at GOSH, down to childhood cancer, and then the more I learned about things, then it was the brain tumours. And I found myself in a situation where I decided I wanted to do more out. It was all getting too much to try and do it and work at the same time, as promoting stuff during Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And you know how long it takes to write all these posts in every different platform. All the different channels, they're all slightly different. You can't just copy and paste very easily without a modification. So it takes time, and with a busy work, I had a very busy job as well, and doing international travel, etc. I decided to see if I could go down to part-time, thinking if I worked 3 days a week, I'd do 2 days where I spent part of the time with Lily and Luna when they're not at school, and some time just looking at some charity things, and I very quickly realised that wasn't enough, and spoke to my pensions advisor and realised actually I was about to be 55, I could afford to retire early and switch from doing, it's funny, isn't it? I say I'm retired, but I'm not. I'm unretired is the term that I know some people like to use. So I've switched from doing paid employment to unpaid voluntary work. And I was very fortunate. I was an associate partner at Ernst & Young, and I had some very good contacts who were also involved with charities. Spoke with a couple, and through them got introduced indirectly to one of the vice chairs at the time of the brain tumour charity, who was very kind and told me about the charity. I knew a bit about them. I'd shared all their Head Smart details, all the signs and symptoms stuff a few years before. And he said, it was just amazing. He said, we're actually recruiting for trustees. So if you're interested, I'll send you the pack. So we did, and I had to apply like everyone else. So I was going through that application process. Through the work at Gosh, I'd already become an ambassador, but that was at the time of COVID. And so nothing really happened. And I was very fortunate that, again, we'd funded we'd put the first tranche of money that we'd raised into their sight and sound building, which Lily uses a lot for all of eye tests, etc. And we were invited to the opening of it a few years ago, and I got talking to the chief exec, Louise Parks, and happened to say, she'd asked me a question about work. I said, actually, I'm retiring, and in fact, I'd love to do more charity work with Gosh. Can I come and see you and send you my CV? So I did, and as a result of that, I've been doing some things for them, which has included telling Lily's story and helping to raise awareness and get fundraising for their children's cancer centre, which obviously means a lot to me. And then the other thing that was happening around, so it was all at the same time. And then the other thing is, one of my contacts introduced me to somebody who introduced me to the chief exec of Make-A-Wish, and had a chat with him and sent my CV. And he put me in touch with his director of finance and technology. And I ended up helping them with a technology project. That finished last year, actually. And I'm due to talk to them again soon, because I might do something again coming up with them, because that was where my last 10 years at EY were. I was involved in a global digital transformation project. And I think when it came to Make-A-Wish, it was great to do something that was more in line with my core work skills, if you like, because I was successful in getting the trustee role at the brain tumour charity, and it is amazing. And I've been doing all sorts of things for them in addition to the trustee work. I have been telling Lily's story to raise awareness to help with the signs and symptoms, because that faster diagnosis, so other families don't have to go through that torturous year that we had. And so I'm doing that with them, and a lot of the work with them obviously good for me, because a lot of it has a correlation with the work I was previously doing whilst in employment. And so it's nice to do that, but obviously a lot of it's some of it's brain tumour related, and you don't always, it's getting the balance between immersing yourself in it and having some breathing space. And then say the Gosh thing is more about Lily's stories. It gives me a purpose. And that was the thing I'd realised I'd done before I decided to retire. When I first went part-time, I realised, having done some courses with EY all around purpose, because EY's purpose is to build a better working world, and they wanted us to think about our purpose in the context of that, and what's our purpose whilst at EY, but also generally in life. And I realised that my purpose lay, I knew what my purpose would have been even 10 years before, but with Lily's diagnosis, I knew that my purpose lay elsewhere, and actually it was time for me to move into doing something completely different. And I'm very privileged. I'm very fortunate that I've cut back my spending. I'd be a much wealthier pensioner if I worked another 10 years as originally planned, but it's not important to me. That's not important. What's important, I don't need another pair of jeans or a fancy holiday. I don't want to have those things. What I want to do is to make a difference, because until you're in this, you don't realize how reliant everybody is on the charities. And one of Lily's chemos actually was a new chemo, and it was funded by Gosh, because it's not available on the NHS. And you hear too many stories of people having to go elsewhere, and it's the charities that are providing so much support to patients. I want to give that back, because, as I said earlier, With Lily being my granddaughter rather than my daughter, I can only help so much with Lily. And actually, the rest of my time I can give to making the most of my whole 33 years at EY. I built up a lot of different skills, and it's fantastic to use those. And actually, I need to, because if you don't, I need that distraction as well. And that was the advantage of working through Lily's early diagnosis, because I had to work. And so from hour to hour, I had a meeting, I had a project and work to get done, and I stopped thinking about Lily. And so I didn't have that churning all the time in my head about what might happen and what's this and what's that. And it is important to have something else to focus on.
Yeah.
And having the work at the charities is really helpful to me, because I found that in my retirement, I can easily spend my day. I'm learning to play golf, as I've said already, and I go to the gym, and I've got friends I can go for coffee with, I can go for long walks. But that doesn't take me out of my head and distract me.
You've got involved in the brain tumour charity campaign. It's a no-brainer.
Basically, there were 34 of us, and the reason it was 34 was and the reason we went on the 29th of February, because it was a leap year, and 34 people in the UK get diagnosed with a brain tumour every day. And so actually on the 29th of February, that was an extra 34 people this year, because we've got an extra day this year. And what we're calling for from the government, or from whoever gets into government, is a national brain tumour strategy, because we really need that end-to-end look at all components. We need to cover effectively the whole pathway of care and research. So from the diagnosis into the treatments and how we care for people, and the research, and then getting that better treatment. Because by having that end-to-end, all-encompassing strategy that covers all the 4 developed nations, that's going to help move us forward, and to give people that faster diagnosis, making sure that everybody has the support they need, the care they need. You've got consistency in care. It's not a postcode lottery. And also making sure that we've got the right research, and actually we're doing both the initial research plus that translational research into pilots to get the treatments out to the patients, because you need to have all elements. If we're really going to change this, it's almost allowing that step change. We've had calls for more money on research, we've had more calls for more diagnosis, but actually, if we really want to take us from brain tumours no longer being the biggest cancer killer of adults under 40 and all children, it's the biggest killer of children's cancer as well, to really make a difference, we've got to do all of the components, because you can't just do one in its own. You can't just chuck a load of money at research, because you've got to make sure that those drugs that are the treatments being researched make it into a pilot and ultimately get approved, and they're available in the NHS in every hospital. And so that's just one element. But you've got that on the diagnosis side. Too many people were like my family. Too many people are not. No, you should go to the doctor more than 3 times before they get before there's a brain tumour diagnosis. And like I say, we lost count. We stopped counting how many times we took Lily. But it's having that joined up end-to-end complete strategy for current government, future government, whoever it might be. It's apolitical. It doesn't matter which government's in. It's what we really need in this country to move us forward. My no-brainers are, it's a no-brainer that we clearly need faster diagnosis. We need every brain tumour patient needs to be offered a chance to participate in a trial. I think I said pilots earlier, that's my tech talk. It's trials, obviously. And we need that complete priority for the research as well, so that we're doing all aspects of the research that's needed, and everyone have equal care. It's a no-brainer to expect that it doesn't matter where you're in the country, you should have the same chance of a trial and the same care.
Yeah, just fairness. Just if they're, you're not trying to take it away from anybody else, but it needs to be fair. Let people have a chance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's right. And I think that's really important, because lots of people say, oh, millions get spent on breast cancer and prostate cancer and etc. And that's true, and that's great.
Yeah.
And that needs to continue too.
Of course.
All of the cancers need more support.
Just be fair.
Because of it just needs to be fair. Why is the one that kills more people, certainly under 40, why is that one getting so little? And why? And so, as I say, for us, the no-brainer is we need a step change. And if you're going to make a step change, you've got to look at all of the components that are needed and move them all forward together.
Yeah. Is there anyone you want to mention that's really supported you? Because obviously what you've gone through.
Lots of friends have been very understanding. My work colleagues were amazing and gave me time whenever I needed it. They were absolutely fantastic. The charity, the brain tumour charity, are always asking me if I'm okay. And if I say, can I do something else? What can I do? And if I say, don't take on too much. We realise some of the stuff could upset you, etc. I'm saying, look, I'm fine. You do these things when you feel ready and able. There was a point where I'd signed up for to be a GOSH ambassador originally, and then actually Lily wasn't doing so well, and I had to contact them and said, look, I just can't do this right now. And I think that it's interesting. There's things I can and can't do. When I help in Make-A-Wish, I'm very keen to help them on anything to do with their digital, their technology transformations, etc. Because that's more work related. I don't feel I could do a traditional volunteer role for them where I'm talking to the children and the families to see what their wishes are, because I just don't. I just don't feel I'm strong enough. So you learn to choose to pick what you can. Hearing the stories of people, and I think this is where I start to realise that I'm so grateful when you see some of the people and you hear their stories. And I know a number of people who have lost their children, not necessarily as young as Lily, some are. But it's heartbreaking, and I just have to be careful with those conversations. I did have some counselling early on, but everyone is so very supportive, and you often talk about it. It's a club that nobody wants to be in, but actually it's an amazing club. Everybody is amazing. I'm part of a grandparents group, grandparents of children with cancer, and that's been great. I don't.
How can people find that one if someone comes on and they are a grandparent?
That one's on Facebook. They could ping me. You're going to have my details on this, aren't you? So they could ping me and I can introduce them to the lady that sets it up, because I think it's a private group. Yeah, because that's been helpful for me. I think it's not brain tumour specific, but because for me, speaking to other grandparents has been I'm very lucky that I've got a great relationship with Lily's other grandma, and we've regularly, we've had coffee from time to time, chewing over what we do to try and fill the gaps on our knowledge, what she knows and what I know, and trying to piece it all together and just giving that support, because it is an unusual situation when you are the grandma or the granddad, I guess, as well, and you can only get involved so much. Obviously, all families vary. So to have that network, and I've got another lady that I was put in contact with through someone from work, and she's a grandma whose granddaughter's being treated for leukemia, and she's fantastic. So she and I talk to each other as well. But this Facebook group as well is out there for other people, and they might find it useful.
Thank you very much. I really appreciated all that you've done. And
thank you to you. Thank you so much,
Great
Claire.
to talk
really
to you.
appreciate you taking the time. Okay. Take care.
This is the Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. It's a show full of informative chat and inspirational messages. The Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show on podcast.